All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Sydney Jackson, and joining me on this fourth panel of the day for representation is Mr. Carl Bernard. I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And it's good to be here again with Sports in Focus. I don't know what years makes my presence here, but it's a few times. And my name again is Carl Bernard. I have been practicing law for nearly 30 years. I've taught sports law and music law at Tulane University, LSU's law school, as well as in the last 15 years at Loyola School of Law. Um, I am a former professional athlete. I used to play ball with the Detroit Lions. We will win the Super Bowl this year. Uh, and former engineer. I was a petroleum engineer for a while and then got into law and have been doing that for a minute. I also, in between all of that, I was a sports agent for about 10 years. And I represented guys from, I guess, probably the most celebrated guy that I've represented is Booger McFarland. He's now an ESPN analyst, and all the way down to the Budman Michael Lewis, who was a fan favorite with the Saints, and all points in between. We've had first round draft picks all the way to free agent picks, and I mainly represented football players, even though I did do a few basketball players, but they were overseas, and individuals in the sports market. Now, again, I practice. My field of practice is labor and employment law, which was a segue into from the agent business into I guess more traditional practice of law. And how I got there, I was representing an individual who wanted to be a head coach. He was African American, wanted to be a head coach at a Division I university. And I had some great ties because of my athletics at the university where I graduated from. And so I contacted the university and the president, and lo and behold, after about 3 months, they gave him a shot. He became the first Division I African American head coach in the South at University of Southwestern Louisiana, now University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Well, 3 years in, when he took over the program, first of all, the program was bankrupt. No, I'll just say bankrupt. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. And they brought him in because he was the number one recruiter in talent at LSU. He was assistant head coach at LSU, and he recruited just about all of the top flight athletes that played football at LSU. And so they brought him in basically to restock. And once the program was up and running, 3 years in, I think they were predicted to win the conference the next year after his third year, or going into his third year. And then they fired him and brought in someone else. And then he called me up and said, hey, they fired me because I'm black. They saw what I was doing. They see what I'm doing, but they didn't want me to be the head coach and the face of the program now that we're on the crest of winning and becoming a powerhouse. And he tells me, hey, I want you to file suit against him. I said, Coach, that's my university. I'm on the wall over there. I got to see. I was outstanding to see petroleum engineering, student athlete of the year award. I mean, that's, Coach, whoa. And then, being a guy like he is, it was, you don't stand for something, or you just going, get pats on the back. And after thinking about it for about a month and trying to move the case from my door to someone else's door, he convinced me to take the case. Well, the case was a celebrated case on ESPN. It was following because it was the first major lawsuit against the university by an African American coach And obviously, there were a lot of African Americans saying, "Don't sue, you're going to ruin for everybody," because they'll think that they can't hire us now because if things don't work out, they're going to file suit against them. And then there were individuals on the other side said, "Hey, they did you wrong. This is the law. They broke the law. You stand for your rights." And so we went ahead and filed suit. It was a long, drawn out battle. We ended up winning the first battle. Um, a $3 million verdict on the case, and it was everywhere across ESPN, and that's what catapulted me into the labor and employment business. Because once we won it at the trial level, we ended up, my phone just running off the hook. In the case, they appealed. We had another trial. It was a mistrial, and they appealed again. We thought we were going to settle the case, and then come almost 15 years later, the case was resolved. And so now, but as you might imagine, the head coach is no longer coaching. He's a pastor of a church in Louisiana, doing really, really well, and runs his own school. And so that's how I got into labor and employment law, because I was negotiating contracts on a regular basis for years and dealing with from apparel agreements, player agreements, you name it. I mean, promoter agreements, because if you're in sports, you're in music. That's just, you're in music. You cannot, those guys, the guys that are in sports, they're friends of the guys that are in music, and they hang out together. And so if you're doing one, you're going to do the other eventually. And so that's how I kind of got into the business of practicing labor and employment law, and it kind of dovetails into representation. Now, the topic that I was given was representation in sports. Well, representing professional athletes or wanting to represent an athlete is a tough business. It is very, very tough. It is tough simply because there are only, let me just give you an example. Most lawyers, when they look out of the window, they see maybe 1,000 potential clients, maybe 1 million. In a city like Houston, with 6 million people, metro area, you walk out, you may see 500,000 potential clients. Well, in this business, you might see one, that has the ability to go from, high school to college to the professional ranks. It is a tough business because there's so few people that can play at that level, especially in basketball. Football, you only have 1,500 athletes, 1,500 at any given time, in any given year. And so it's a tough business, but there's always room for a good one. I tell individuals all the time that if you're good at what you do, if you have a passion for it, somebody will say, "Hey, I want you to be my agent. I want you to represent me." And the way I broke into the business was I used some of the tricks of the trade that lawyers use to break into businesses. I started putting on seminars for athletic directors across the state of Louisiana. From LSU to McNeese State, Grambling Southern, I did the seminars, and I combined, or at least got some friends of mine that work with the NCAA to travel down with me, so it made me official, at the NCAA with me. And I had some of my buddies from the NFLPA that are still there, Philly Doc and a couple of people that flew in with and would travel the streets of Louisiana, going all around the state and putting on these seminars. And as a result, I became a respected expert in the do's and don'ts of sports agency. And as a result, when they would have these agency seminars introducing the football players, the basketball players, and even baseball players to this particular aspect of their career, they would bring me in. And so, because I was there, I came through the front door, I didn't have to go through the back door. Oftentimes, the coaches would, "Hey, check him out. He seems like a really good guy." And that's how I broke into the business, by representing coaches from softball to baseball to football and basketball. doing well by them, and then getting a reputation with the athletic directors and getting in before the guys. And so that's how I broke into the business. But the business, nonetheless, is a tough business.
So, from your view as a former sports agent, what are the key components of a strong relationship between the athlete and their agent, and how can that agent best support them?
Well, there's several questions there. That would be an objection compound question in court, but but the first rule of thumb I think that every agent has to accept is that every great athlete is not for you. I mean, I don't care how good, I don't care how much money, but every person is not for you. That was a hard lesson that I had to learn, and it took a couple knocks in the head before I realized that, you know what, this guy ain't for KB. You know, he may be a good guy, he may be a great athlete, but he ain't for me. And because and I'll give you an example. We were big on putting on football camps for our athletes, giving back to the community, so to speak, and inviting a lot of kids, giving away bike scholarships, you name it, and even associated a golf tournament with it. But one of the kids I did this for, not a kid anymore, but he's grown man, but he didn't really feel it, you know, and I think we only had maybe some of the athletes that we represented that were more celebrated than he was. They would have 300 to 500 kids at their camp. So it was a big showing. Well, because he was not as celebrated, we only were able to pull in maybe 100 to 150 kids at his camp. And you know, if you're in a big old stadium, football stadium, you got 100 kids running around, it doesn't sound or look or feel as good unless you get them all together. And so he felt really embarrassed by that. And my answer to him was, hey, we're working on certain things, but we're just going to build. You know, don't despise small beginnings. Let's just build this thing up. And well, he got incensed, and he just kind of grabbed me by the collar, so to speak, not physically but verbally, and beat me by the head and shoulders, not physically but verbally. And then I realized, and you know, I had that epiphany right then and there when he, in between one MF and another F, I said, you know what, you ain't for me. You know what I mean? Because athletes are very, very, very. I mean, what you see on television and what you see behind the mic, it's a lot better now than it was when I was coming up. I mean, we used to cringe when a guy got the microphone back in the day. Oh Lord, what are you gonna say? But now it's more articulate now. But you don't know a guy until you know a guy. You know, you just don't know. You just don't know what triggers an individual, what baggage that they're carrying. And as their agent, you are almost, I hate to say it, but you're almost like a wife, because you're there with the athlete for every major thing that happens in his life. And even if you're not supposed to be there, people expect you to be there. Like if he gets in trouble at a bar, has a bar fight, well, I'm your agent. I represent you playing football, but I'm not your lawyer representing you. You know, if you get in trouble at a bar. But no, they expect, the news media expects you to be there. Other people, well, where was your agent? Where was it? So you have to be there. You have to accept these calls at 2 and 3 in the morning. And so, first rule of thumb: every athlete is not for you. All money is not good money. It's just not the case. That's the first rule of thumb. And then you got to know who you are. You got to know why am I in this business? Because it is so intimate. I mean, you know the parents, you know the girlfriends, you know the friends, you know his proclivities, his or her proclivities, you know everything about this person. Then you got to figure out, why am I in the business? Am I in the business to make money? Period. You got to be honest with yourself. Am I in the business to make money? Period. Because if you're in the business to make money, and that's all you're in the business for, I think you're gonna be disappointed. You're gonna be disappointed because of all of the entanglements that you'll get involved with the mom, the dad, the uncles, because the whole purpose of the key is to make sure that this athlete is in a situation, a circumstance where he can be the most productive, so that when it's time to re-up to get that next agreement, you can get that big check, and so you have to keep things away, and so you end up being a counselor between the, the girlfriend and the athlete, because she can't figure out why he doesn't buy her this, that, and the other when he's got the doggone money now. And even the mom, you know, uh, girl, they call me, a lot of people call me, depending where you're from, girl, he made so many millions of dollars. Why can't I get a house? He got a house. Why can't I get a house? He lived in my house for 20 years. Why can't I? And so you deal with a lot of different things. You deal with a lot of different things. And so you gotta know why you're in the business. I was in the business for, I came from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I grew up in Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. You're in it for altruistic purposes. You're trying to help society, help America be a better place, help your community. So I got the business and make money. I got the business to, be there for these guys, be their agent, to be a role model, a big brother. And I'll never forget a guy told me point blank, hey man, you ain't my daddy, you ain't my big brother. Matter of fact, you ain't even kin. All you are is my agent. Just do my contract and shut the up. You gotta know why it's a tough game. It is a tough game. But just as many, I guess, difficult situations and circumstances I can relate just as many great situations, because I've had a ton of individuals that have allowed me to represent them that are doing extremely well. They may not be on television, but they're productive fathers, wonderful husbands, and they're doing their job in coaching now or teaching, and that's usually where they wind up doing. They end up in the coaching profession or teaching, because they want to stay next to the game. But you got to know why you're in it, and you got to recognize it's a difficult game. And the athlete is not necessarily what they appear to be on. I mean, you hear about a lot of stories you don't even hear about. I'll tell you one more anecdote. So one guy, before he was out of LSU, projected first round draft pick. I get a call from the investigator down at the police office in Baton Rouge, and because I'm his agent, and you got to come down here and take care of this. So I drive down there, boom, boom, boom. He's in custody, and come to find out he was engaged to a white girlfriend, and she got mad at him, and she did what a lot of mad white people do sometimes. She called him the N-word, and he responded, or rather, he reacted. He heard that and he reacted. And next thing you know, he's arrested. But the draft is 2 weeks away. So if this gets out, you can imagine what could happen. And so you go down, you do what you have to do. You befriend, you make friends, you just make friends. And next thing you know, the information, it does come out, but it comes out maybe 2 months after the draft, after he's been drafted. And these are the types of situations that can really, but if you have a passion for it, because there's some kids like that have turned their lives completely around. I mean, went from drug heads to, stellar citizens. And simply because that one person, that one voice stuck by. And oftentimes it was the agent that stuck right there with them through the tough times, through the difficult times, and watched them and helped them return a bad situation.
Now, in that same conversation, we know the case with Nicole Lynn and Jalen Hurts. Like she took a chance and became from the same university, Oklahoma, I believe. Um, what advice for aspiring agents would you say to take that chance on it? Like, you said you gotta choose the right one.
Yeah.
How would you take that chance?
Yeah, to answer your question, you have to have a connect. There has to be someone to connect you to that athlete, someone that he trusts that also trusts you. There has to be, because a guy like Jalen Hurst is huge. You can imagine all of the people that are surrounding him trying to get next to him and trying to get in, trying to say, hey, I'm the one. They're probably approaching him from the advertising angle, approaching him from the movie angle. Hey, you got a great story, you got a great story. From this angle, they're approaching him from the Christian angle. I heard you're a Christian, and I'm a Christian. I do this, that, yeah, I'm a speaker, I'm a minister. Boom. They're approaching him, man, I'm your relative, because, you have to have a connect to get in. That's number one. Else, I don't necessarily believe in luck. I don't. I think you things happen, but they happen because there is somebody on your side. Jesus, God, and so and sometimes you get that breakthrough that you can't even fathom. It just happens sometimes, and all you can do is just lift your hands and say thank you. But you have to have a connect. I think now one of the difficult and most profound situation is that she's female. As a matter of fact, I taught sports law this past semester, and several of the law students were female that wanted to get into the sports agency business. And we had a little sit down talking, and I told them point blank, it is time. It is tough, especially if you're beautiful, because the me Tarzan, you Jane mentality is still there. It is still prevalent. And I can't tell you the number of female agents that I've talked to that got out of the business. Great lawyers, great people, but simply because the male-female dynamic in terms of the attractiveness was so overwhelming for the guy's standpoint that they had to have a guy with them every time they were with their athletes. However, if you get a guy like Jalen Hurst, who is, that's the kind of guy a female athlete should go after, or you have to have, someone with you. But that is a marvelous story. I don't know all the details. I just know the broad swipes. But that is a marvelous story. Clearly, she's done a remarkable job. Even helped out Mr. Jackson at Lamar Jackson with his deal. He wanted to do it without an agent because she was so successful. He just modeled his contract after what was already done, which was smart. But I think he went through a lot of rigmarole that he should not have gone through. He had just hired somebody to do it. Great story.
My next question. So beyond the negotiations, how can sports agents provide mentorship to their
Well, that's really oftentimes for a lot of sports agents that are just starting out. That's how they get into the game, because it's hard to start at the top of the food chain. You're going after the number one picks, the guys that are projected in the first round, because if you're just getting in, you may not have all the banking relationships you need to support an athlete like that. You may not have all the entertainment relationships you need to support an athlete. In other words, guys want to show early. They want to floss, they want to flaunt as soon as their eligibility is ended. And now with NIL, they can even do it now. It's not, and so it can be tough. But for the agent that's breaking in, that's how being his mentor, somebody that he looks up to, somebody has connected with him or her nowadays, because female athletes are making enough money to support an agent now. Because sometimes when you look at a lot of great female athletes, however, But if you're only taking 3% of $100,000, and you're spending a lot of time with this particular athlete, and there's only 24 hours in a day, you got other things going on. She has other things going on. That's not a whole lot of money. It's $3,000, you know. And and that's why a lot of folks flock to the male athletes, because you're talking about millions of dollars as opposed to a few $100,000. Now, not all female athletes are like that. Obviously, those that are in individual sports, tennis and that type of thing, you can make some money there. But they're oftentimes represented by huge agencies. But for the small guy, the new guy, I broke in as a mentor because the coaches that I represented, and this is how the scenario goes. Who gets the athlete to join that university or sign scholarship with the university? The coach. Why does the athlete sign a letter of intent or a scholarship agreement with that university? Because the coach oftentimes, fortunately or unfortunately, is a father figure for the athlete. So he trusts the coach. He likes the coach. He hangs out with the coach. The coach makes sure that mama's okay, that brothers and sisters are okay. Coach even finds dad if the dad's not in the picture, or the coach befriends the father. You know, he's kind of like a surrogate father to the guy. And so when the coach says, "Hey, I want you to talk to KARL Bernard," okay. So he's looking at me as a replacement for his coach, because now he's going to a league, going to the league now. And it's strictly business. You don't have the close relationships that you had in college or high school at the professional level. So he's looking for me or the agent to replace the coach that brought him from this high school to this big time university and placed him in a position to get drafted. And so that's how I got in, being a mentor. So what the coach did, I did. Called, "Hey man, everything okay?" You know, check on him at night. "Hey, you in? Oh, I'm in. You know, hey, just checking on you. How's school going? Blah blah blah. What do you need? Man, I need another cell phone. I got that for you. Anything that athlete needs, and that's why you need to have banking relationships, because you need money. You need money to represent big time athletes, and there are banks that will loan money to a professional, aspiring athlete that is projected to go in the first through the third round, because the banks are assured that they're going to get that money back. But you have to have a life insurance policy or disability insurance policy to go along with that. So if the kid gets injured, which happened to me, we had a big time receiver out of Arkansas. He gets injured, but we had $1 million Lloyd's of London policy on him. So everybody was paid and we were able to get that money back. But you gotta have some capital to really work this business, because you can't go just because you're a good guy, you know, great reputation, and the guy says, "Hey man, I want a G-Wagon." You just can't say, "Oh, why do you want to get a G-Wagon, bro? Why don't you get you a little, start off with a, you know, we'll start off with a little car, a little jump way to the top." And he's gonna look at you like you're crazy, because he knows all he has to do is pick up the phone, and he's gonna have a G-Wagon out in front of his apartment door. Bottom line, in probably an hour, And so you have to have a relationship. Banks will allow you to do it. If he's a big time guy, you just got to know it. They'll do it for you, hook you up, and so you can. But you get in as a mentor, but you stay in because you're meeting needs.
So with the financials, we know that a lot of people do spend a lot their first couple years, and it either works out or then now they're fresh out. How would you either support them when they finally get to that low point, or try to stop them from spending so much?
Yeah, that's always tough. It's tough because it's tough for non-athletes. I mean, you think about your first job that you had, making some money. I mean, probably the first 2 or 3 checks you get blown, simply because it's your first job. You wanted to get a car, do some nice things, buy some nice stuff, get something for somebody that you had done so much for you. You're just blowing your first 2 or 3 checks. Well, the difference is you're talking about, for a normal person, maybe maybe $5, $10, $20,000, but for an athlete, it may be a few $100,000. And so the impact is a lot greater. But you I'll never forget, um, one of the most difficult things as an agent is to get a normal, everyday, and now when I mean normal everyday, I mean economic, in terms of economic, not in terms of paying for but in terms of the economic stability, the economic ability, to get a normal person to appreciate $1 million, to appreciate $2 million, to appreciate getting a check every week for $150,000 a week, to appreciate that and not just see it as play money, because that's how it feels, because you've never seen it. And matter of fact, you don't see it. All you see is just zeros in your bank account, or if you're still getting a check, but all you do, you don't really see the money. And everything now is electronic. And so to get that individual to appreciate that you're in the top 2% or 1% of the American population is hard, because most people won't see that kind of money for 2 years. One check, $150,000 in 1 week. Most people won't see that in 2, maybe 3 years as gross pay. And to get that individual to appreciate that this is a lot of money, that you've got to manage it properly, that just as quickly as it came, it can go, is a tough task. And so I would always tell the guys and even now, agents that I counsel right now, look, just get it in your mind, don't panic, but those first 3 or 4 checks, they're gone. He's gonna blow it. They're gonna blow it. He's gonna have Ray Ray and everybody up there at every game, flying them in, first class, private jet. I mean, that money can go. You get a private plane and have that plane sitting on the tarmac for a few hours and then flying back, oh, you're gonna drop some G. There's no doubt about that. And then just all the things that go along with it, the transportation, because you're not getting Ubers, you get limos, and you know what I mean? And they're waiting for you because you're enjoying the fruits of your labor, and it's really nothing wrong with that. But as the agent, you gotta let them know, be the voice of reason, but not so much that you get pushed out the door, because people hate hearing the word no. No, you can't do that. No, not an athlete, because all he's heard since he was this big is yes. I mean, if you're a good athlete, you probably can count the number of times on one hand that somebody's told you no. Everybody tells you yes. And so now here you are as the agent. You negotiate this great contract, and now you're telling him he can't spend his money. What he's gonna tell you, I tell you what, I'm not gonna pay you. Uh-oh. and so what you're doing is, at that point in time, you say to yourself, okay, let me make sure I get my money. Let him do what he wants to do. He'll figure it out eventually. But let me make sure I get my paper. And then, pay me first. But that is a difficult thing to do, but for anybody, when you start, because those guys, especially if they're not going to the playoffs, man, that's the worst games to watch. The last part of the season, if you're not going to the playoffs, because they're not trying to get hurt. They want to be on the beach, Miami Beach, or be somewhere where they can enjoy, the fruits of their labor.
So moving on from ethics, excuse me, what should sports agents keep in mind with their athletes, representing them? How can they ensure their welfare and the well-being of their athletes?
Well, that's a twofold question, and this is why. As a lawyer, you have ethical obligations to maintain your license. If you're not a lawyer, it's just the integrity and dignity of your heart that guides you. That because the rules that, like the NCAA rules, pertain to benefits that are received or could be received to jeopardize an athlete's eligibility. The rules at the professional level just pertain to your proficiency and or ability to negotiate and understand the collective bargaining agreement, which is the agreement that governs the relationship between management and the players. So that's what you have to kind of be concerned about. But in terms of ethics, unless you're holding yourself out as an investment advisor, you know, that's another set of ethical laws that you have to, fiduciary responsibilities that you have. But as an attorney, that becomes a totally different issue. Because technically, an attorney cannot solicit business. Well, how do you get clients if you can't solicit business? An attorney cannot divulge, because the information that this athlete shares with me is technically attorney-client privilege. And so, you know, and that privilege is ironclad. It's ironclad. I mean, to the grave. And so, in advising individuals, all I can do is speak for myself. I would tell my guys that, you know, there's certain things that I just cannot do. It would jeopardize my life. You know, I have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. You know, that's in the code. I have to avoid the appearance, not that I'm doing anything, but I can't look like I'm doing something. You know, you know what I mean? You know, and so it's a little different. For a non-attorney, they can kind of they can skirt the lines a little bit more. But I tell my guys all the time is that once football is over with, they're gonna maybe remember your name maybe about a year, 2 years, 3 years max. And in terms of what you did on the football field, all you're gonna have to come home to is your last name, and that affects mama, daddy, wifey, girlfriend, sons, daughters, and you want to avoid doing anything that would have long-term consequences and affect your son or daughter that's trying to get into a professional school. Because it's no doubt there have been many individuals whose name alone, because they're the son or the daughter of an athlete that people tend to associate good things with your parents, and they associate the bad things that your parents have been involved with to the child as well. And you try to avoid that. And all you can do is tell them, because they're grown people. They're grown men. All you can do is tell them and live before them. You know, yeah. But it's tough. It's tough when you're young and you got a lot of money and people know you everywhere you go and they never tell you no. It's tough.
For the future, how do you anticipate the role of sports agents with their athletes, especially along with the PR teams and social media and all the things coming out? How do you think that'll change?
I think, and this is my prediction. I think what you're seeing with Lamar, I think there'll always be a place for agents because of the youth of the athlete. They'll always need that person in their life that has life experiences in, you know, how to buy a home, what do you do, how do you purchase a car, how do you go about doing that, you know, how do you invest, what should I do, you know, and this girl, there's a lot of, alternatives, issues that I had to deal with, you know, and, because people, you know, that's his baby, and it's like, oh my goodness, and so you've got to deal with a lot of different things. They'll always have a need for that guy or that lady in their lives that they can't tell wifey about, they can't tell, they feel uncomfortable going to mom or daddy or going to the coach about, but they'll be comfortable coming to the agent, and because he's on salary or she's on salary, so I can tell you when you're gonna ask you to do at least give me some advice. So there will always be room for an agent, but I think the landscape is changing where it's harder and harder for like the stories that you mentioned, Mr. Hurst, those stories are few and far between. I think they're going to get fewer and fewer, simply because a lot of the smaller agencies are being gobbled up by the major agencies, and you're going to have conglomerates like in a lot of different things, like in banking and that type of thing. We have these huge agencies that can just provide everything, but there will always be one or two athletes that just want that personal touch. But for the majority, I think the way the business is going, the role or the significance of the agent as a negotiator for contracts is dwindling. I think the need for the agent for other areas will always be there, but the need for the agent to negotiate, because nowadays, and it has been, you can get any contract you want. I mean, they're open. You can call the NFLPA and get the contracts. Who's getting paid this? What are their incentives? What are the escalated clauses? What are their, this, that, and that. It's all there for you. And what a lot of athletes are doing now, which is good for me, they're hiring lawyers, not agents, to do their negotiating. However, to negotiate with a club, you have to be a licensed advisor. But what you can do is negotiate through the athlete, which is what I thought Lamar Jackson was trying to do. Hire a lawyer, get some information from him, and negotiate your contract. And you have your lawyer. Lawyer can't participate, in that situation, but he can talk to you and advise you on certain things. And just like with NIL, a lot of the kids are getting involved with these agreements coming out of high school, not understanding the ramifications, the tax implications, all the things they got to deal with in making money that you have to deal with. And so I think what it is doing, it's opening up the industry for lawyers who want to do sports law, but not as agents, and not with a team, but want to help young men, young ladies in negotiating or dealing with some of the opportunities that they have now. But I think it's opening up the can for lawyers that just want to do sports law, but don't want to necessarily get the 3 a.m. phone calls.
That was gonna be my last question, and I know this been talked about yesterday and earlier today, but thank you for that.
Yes.
Are there any questions from the audience?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So now that we're talking about the point that you just made, do you think it's more difficult for someone who wants to become a sport agent to go that route without being a licensed attorney?
No.
And the only reason why I ask that is because a lot of people that I'm talking to now that want to go that route feel like they need to go get a law degree first, because they feel like the edge is much better to have that, because you can't go into contract negotiations versus someone maybe who played sports and decided that they wanted to go the sport agency route, and that's how they kind of got into it that way, starting at the bottom and working their way up, that there's a more edge when you do have a law degree.
I would agree that there may be an edge in terms of the introduction, the initial part, because really a law degree does not qualify you for anything other than the ability to research and write. Law schools teach you how to think like a lawyer, but they don't teach you how to practice law. You learn how to practice law once you're out there. And so the intro is there because, hey, I got a law degree, I'm a licensed attorney, but if there is no experience behind that license, it really, it won't translate. I mean, they'll find you out. The duck will start quacking eventually, okay? And so, but I do agree, because I tell everybody, I tell my kids, you don't know what to do, go to law school. Because people think you're qualified for every and anything. And because we're a country of laws. I mean, lawyers are involved in everything. I mean, from construction to traffic signals to the laws, from legislatures across the country. I mean, lawyers are involved in everything. But in terms of agency, it'll get you, okay, he's a lawyer, ooh, okay. But if you know the game and you got just as much confidence without a law degree as a person with a law degree, I have lost athletes to non-lawyers, not to lawyers. The people that outmaneuvered me were guys that were not lawyers. Yeah, that's just facts. I'm just being straight up with you. Does it sound good to mom, to dad? Oh, you finished from blah, 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 and those guys, sounds good to them, but they're not signing that contract. They're not signing the contract. And so, yes, it helps in terms of the introduction, but I don't think in the long run, unless you are doing something with it in this particular, like for instance with me, I've been teaching law school like 20 years. And so I bring a little more cachet to the table. But if you're just starting out, you can do it. I'm telling you, you can do it. If you got it here, you can be successful. Because most agents are not lawyers. They're not. You can do it.
Excuse me for the Ken, I'm trying to stay balanced.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your conversation. You sound like me from a lawyer's perspective, a coaching, a teaching perspective. But in your law, you have to be a coach as well, because you're trying to coach a lot of young men that have not, they're going into a new arena. They don't know how to manage money. And a lot of your clients, once they let you go, they have a tendency to lose their way because you give a man millions of dollars but never had millions of dollars. They don't know what to do with it. And they do a lot of the wrong things. And I know you have some horror stories that you probably will never reveal. But how do you feel about these young men making all this money and not having the know-withal of how to deal with it? Because they're making money, but they're not making investments.
Well, now I look at it from a global standpoint, and I hope nobody gets offended in here, but most Black folks don't know how to handle money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a fact. We know how to go to school, we know how to work a job, we know how to get a degree, we know how to, but we don't understand the mechanics of how to make and earn and increase money. I don't know, but maybe I know people all the time. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 folks that are not in sports and not make this big lump sum that if they lost their job today, that they could live comfortably for 6 months, not worry about a thing. Not many. They got it's because we don't. And so from that standpoint, I don't approach an athlete as if I'm like this guru, because I'm steadily learning how to manage money. You know what I'm saying? And what you have to do is understand that is a part of our background, that many of us do not have that type of acumen in terms of you know how to make money, but manage and grow money is a whole different story. And so what I do is I tell them straight up, man, look, I make money, yes, but look, this is the guy that I talk to. This is the guy who's been doing this stuff for years. This is his portfolio. He took me from A to B, on this. Now imagine if you gave him this gargantuan bag, what he could potentially do with that. Because I've got some guys that have played in just a handful, that had played in years. They still have their principal. The money that they made in the league is still sitting in an investment account. Hadn't been touched because they got with the right person that understood how to make and manage money. I have met, few individuals, that have that kind of acumen. Maybe our next generation, my kids will have that acumen. But for me, when I came out, it was, I knew how to go to school, I knew how to get a job, I knew how to keep a job, okay? And that's most folks that are in their mid-40s, probably 40s, 50s, and 60s, 70s, and up, from my experience. Now, there's a new wave coming up where these guys are going into financing and understanding the mechanics of money. That it's gonna be a different day. And with these athletes making this kind of money today, like when I played, the minimum salary in the NFL was $65,000 a year. Now the minimum's over 700,000. Just if you don't even, you just on the team. I'm on the team. I'm on the team. $700,000 a year. And because of that money, you're gonna have people that are educating themselves because their friends are still in school. The guys that went to high school with, they're in school. Kind of like the LeBron James story. I mean, his friends, he had the flash, the dash, and the this, but they wouldn't educate themselves about everything else. And now they're what? They're billionaires. That you will see that example, I think, played out more and more in the future than in the past. Thank you.
I have one more question.
Mhm.
So now that you're a sports law professor, what other intangibles are you teaching them, especially as a minority yourself, like a Black man, from your experiences? What are you teaching them?
Wow. You say athletes or students, law students?
Law students.
What I'm trying to convey, ultimately, is you have to have an end game. A guy told me a long time ago, and this is nothing new. I'm sure you heard it before, but I've actually somewhat started doing it. And that is, you need to write out your eulogy. I know they sound morbid, but you need to write what you want people to say about you when it's all said and done. And how you want to be remembered is how you behave today. And so I try to convey to my kids, the students that I teach, the clients that I have, is do not try to avoid the temptation of making decisions based upon how you feel and what you see. Because all of this stuff changes. We saw that in COVID. I mean, things just totally changed in a day. You have to, I do this in my class. I say, you have to have an end game. You gotta be able to see around the corner. You gotta ask those questions. What's coming up? What's next? What's 5 years from now? What's 10 years from now? You have to have an end game. And for me, my end game is to leave a legacy whereby we will never, ever have to ask for money again. That's where I want to be. And what I mean by that is, you can imagine, you got to unpack it. I don't want to do that here, but I want whatever you decide to do. Because a lot of guys like I get in, they do sports law, and they get in it for a while and get out. But we have to understand that we live in America, and it's a capitalistic society, and you make money very few ways. And the global way you make money is by selling something. Selling something. Either you sell your time, you sell your intelligence, you sell your ability. You're selling something. That's how you make money in a capitalist society, by selling. Or you invest in someone that is selling also. That's how people make money. They're selling Either you're selling or you've invested in somebody that's selling. So, and I'm gonna say this. I hope our churches, the most viable economic institution that we have in the Black community, would get this message that the investment has to go to the pew, has to go from the plate back to the pew, the people in the pew. That's my end game, is to be in a position where we can understand that you either selling or you investing in people that sell. Now, I made a mistake and all I did was invest in myself. Well, that's not good because there's no diversification. Because just like any business, I have great years and I have not so great years. But when I have not so great years, if I've invested in you that's selling on this thing, guess what? I'm good. When I'm down, you're up. That's what the stock market's all about. It's diversification. Be diversified. But oftentimes we're taught, we invest in me, invest in me. That's great for a minute, but you might get sick. And then what happens then? You haven't diversified. So you have to diversify. You have to recognize you got to sell something, and you got to invest with others that are selling to diversify your personal portfolio. So you make money. And I hope and pray that this message gets out to, that's my everything. That's my hope. Yes. Sure.
I have just a question, because you started off by talking about the fact that, of course, you were a sports lawyer, but you're also an entertainment lawyer. And so I know a lot of athletes sometimes go into the music business too, or they want to be rappers, and what I had that experience with Shaq.
Yeah.
So but how do you draw the line? I mean, because, they're so interconnected, there's between them. And if you have an athlete that you're working with and all of a sudden, I think I want to go in the music industry and I want to do this, how do you draw the line and say, man, you can't do this?
Well, the bottom line is there are very few people. I know clients that have told me, I don't care what it costs. I want to sue these sons of guns. They did me wrong. And when I was a young lawyer, I would take that case and I would say, hey, sir, we're not going to win. I don't care about winning. They need to know that they can't do this to me. They need to know that they can't do this to us. I don't care about winning. Well, $20,000 later, and then you lose the case that I told you you're going to lose when you still have that $20,000 in your pocket, everything changes. Because at the end of the day, in America, it's about the bag. I mean, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how gifted you are, how beautiful you are. You can do nothing in this country without money. And guess what? The good Lord has allowed it to happen. Now that's something to think about. He's allowed this thing to happen and to thrive for centuries. So you gotta figure, and that's what I tell guys, look, you wanna do this, you wanna do that, or you think you can sing. Let's see. We'll go ahead and do the production, get you a writer, blah, 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 and let's put it out there on Spotify. Let's do, because nowadays you can be an independent artist. You can put your stuff on iTunes, Spotify, Facebook, you can do it all. Let's see who gravitates towards. Let's get it on the radio. Let's see if we're in the radio station. Let's do some poll, let's go ahead. Let's play your record on the radio, and let's see what happens. And oftentimes the sobering, especially for young guys nowadays, they understand the bag. They understand it. And when it doesn't make money, because the old saying, if it ain't making dollars, it don't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it may be a pastime for you, but if you're trying to make money, you gotta show me money. But in terms of where you cross the line, usually the lines aren't crossed. I mean, the lines are always crossed. They're blurred. The lines are blurred. I mean, these guys, young promoters befriend young athletes because they don't understand what millions of dollars mean. They're making all these millions of dollars. Young promoter needs You know, I was, look, last story. This guy, young promoter, he had a gift. He had a gift of attracting artists. Oh, he could bring them in. He could bring them in. And he had a gift of getting guys to invest in what he was doing. And he walked into, you know, a famous team in New Orleans locker room and walked out of that bad boy with $6 million committed to his event. Because they didn't understand. It was like monopoly money. $6 million committed to his event. Well, because he had the money, he was able to put on a mega rap concert where you had everybody from Jay-Z, Nelly, to the Ghetto Boys, Beastie Boys. I mean, you had everybody, Lil Wayne in between, and it was filmed for pay-per-view. So it's like that. And where were the athletes? On the front row, you know, doing their thing, dapping up, enjoying, you know, and hoping to make money. But if they didn't make money, the experience for them at that stage, because they don't understand that, you know, that money's gonna stop coming in about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, hopefully 10. You know, so, but the lines are blurred between athletes and music. And I don't know a lawyer. I don't know many lawyers. I'm sure I know one or two that just not come to mind now. That if you're representing an athlete, that you're not in music. Now you can represent musicians or people like that and not get involved in athletics. But I don't know many that represent athletes, especially this age, that are not involved in the music business. So you got to kind of know both. Yes.
Hi, you've been great, very educational. Do you foresee in the future more athletes like LeBron and or more rock nations, i.e. Jay-Z, happening with the athletes becoming more educated, involved in their finances? Do you see that trend continuing, or is LeBron still this anomaly still?
LeBron is an anomaly. I don't think he's the GOAT, but he's close to it. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's an athlete like him is that's a generational type, maybe once in a lifetime type athlete. Now Jay-Z, on the other hand, there are many individuals that are in the music game that, you know, with the right connections and the right decision making, they can duplicate Rock Nation. Maybe not to the global breadth as Rock Nation, but to some lesser degree. Matter of fact, my good buddy, I went to law school with Raymond Brothers, is president. You know, we were in law school together. He's president.
Right in New York.
Yeah, that's it. And of Jay-Z Sports Agency. And so and he can move. Raymond can move. And he worked his way. He was with Edmonds Sports Agency first as Babyface, and did that for a while in California, kind of parlayed his way up, and doing really well at Rock Nation. And so, but I don't see a LeBron. You know, there's just not many like him. He's a phenom, like a Tiger Woods, like a Michael Jordan. I mean, those guys are just. I mean, I still watch Michael Jordan on television, just in awe.
That's dope. That's dope. So as a follow-up, I said he's the GOAT.
Oh, he is.
By the way, as a follow-up to that, since you teach in academia, what do you think can be done, or do you see anything happening in terms of preparing more young men and women of color to go into sports law? Because there is not a pipeline of us preparing. There aren't schools and graduate programs and law schools that are directed towards preparing these young people to work in that sector. Like they're going into marketing, they're going into development, and they're going into coaching, but we don't have a formal pipeline to prepare more people of color to be to work in sports as lawyers.
Yeah, you know, the good and the bad about life is that life in America is that you have the opportunity. If you want to, you can go do it. If you have it in your heart to pursue any opportunity, there's not much that can stop you other than you primarily. We stop. We're like the old poem that says, we're afraid to be who we were created to be. I forget the name of it, but it's a great line. I think the young lady performed it at President Biden's inauguration. I forget the name of the poem, but it was a great poem. Heard it 1,000 times. But in the sports business, though it's hugely, it's large, I'll just say that. Financially, when you talk about money, when you talk about its impact on the world, but the people that run the business, that make the decision makers, it's just a handful of folks. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what side of the fence you're on, people still like doing business with people that they feel comfortable with. It's just a fact. And there's some good people, they don't think they're excluding people because of their outward appearance or because of their legacy or lack thereof. They just do business with people that they know. And until we, as a people, start working more unified, doing things together so that we can amass and have our own teams, maybe our own league, and where we create opportunities for our young people to get a degree. And hey, I like as a lawyer, owning my law firm, one of my dreams is that when you graduate from law school, one of the firms that you're choosing to work for is my law firm. Because this law firm may not feel comfortable with you. Maybe they have their quota of, of people. Or this law firm doesn't think like you, doesn't believe like you, but this one does. And having that opportunity available is what I think folks in our generation need to be striving for, and not necessarily continuing to knock on the door. I know that has to happen. It's not an either or situation. It's an and. We got to continue to knock the door because the law says we're in, and even though affirmative action has been disbanded, so to speak, and I know the university is going to be very, very clever about how they do it, but the bottom line is there has been a lot of disenfranchisement and we've been kept out. And so the law said you can't keep us out because of our race, because of our gender, because of our religion, sexual orientation, whatever. You can't keep us out. So keep knocking on the door. But in the meantime, we gotta get our thing together. Because to me, just imagine if Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, these guys, they know each other. They play golf together. So you do anything 4 hours with anybody, you must like the guy. On the golf course. Just imagine if instead of thinking, let me be the HNIC, let me be the guy. Just imagine it said, let us create opportunity and let's do something together. Who could stop Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, Tiger Woods? Who could stop that? Because they got everything. They have the pedigree, they got the money. Now the question is, what's their end game? What's their end game? And I hope, that one day, that that black girls and whatnot.
I felt it coming.
I hope that one day that we would, and it's going to start, and I'll go back, it's going to start from our church. I just, because we're just a different type of people, it's going to start there, where the pastors start, instead of just praying for our people, start investing in our people financially. You know, just imagine if you or your cousin, nephew didn't have to go fill out that loan application, get all this stuff and when you can go right to the house where your parents have paid tithes and offerings for 40, 50 years. And bam. Or you got like a lot of other cultures, and I won't call them the others, but they say before the money goes outside of their culture, it's turned over 5 times within their own culture before it goes outside. And I'm not saying that this is not an exclusionary philosophy. It's just a way things are done in America. People do business with people that they're comfortable with, that have the same values, but we need to have that same mentality too, so that we can amass the type of, and not just wealth, but the type of opportunities that are available in this country, targeted for people we feel comfortable with. Well, okay, you can go there if you want to, but you can also shop here too. We got the same stuff. Our burger is just as big, just as hot, and just as tasty. Our ice is just as cold. You know what I'm talking about, didn't you? I know how old you are. Our ice is just as cold. And that's my dream. I'm putting it out there. That's my dream, is that we would do a better job of working together, as opposed to just having one big guy over here, another big guy over here, another big guy over here. You don't see that a lot. I mean, what you see in other cultures is it's like the major law firms. You think about the big old law firms that are running the country. Who do you think are giving them the jobs? Why are you seeing the same names, these law firms representing, these big major corporations? Who's giving them the jobs? Their friends, people they went to school with. They did law, he did business. And now they're both running things, and now we're doing business together because I know you. I believe and I hope it's coming to that point in our culture where we are being just as successful on both ends of the spectrum. But now we have to learn to trust and do business with each other. That's the big divide. That's the big mountain that has to be scaled or climbed. And so I'm a firm believer in the law. I represent individuals that are discriminated against all day, every day. But knocking is one end, but the other end, the other or is let's do what they did to amass, because you can do it here. It's legal to work together and grow big business. It's legal.
I think that was a great place for our discussion today.